Good afternoon everybody, and welcome to the stream. I'm Robert from the El Magnifico Games channel, and today we're going to continue with our usual Wednesday poetry and riddles. Let's get straight into it with a recap of the last two poems we read. That is last week. Both by John Lilly, who is this individual. So, cards and kisses. Cupid and my campasque played at cards for kisses. Cupid paid. He staked his quiver, bow and arrows, his mother's doves, and team of sparrows. Loses them too, then down he throws the coral of his lip, the rose growing on his cheek, but none knows how. With these, the crystal of his brow, and then the dimple of his chin, all these did my campasque win. At last he set her both his eyes, she won, and Cupid blind did rise. O love, has she done this for thee? What shall, alas, become of me? Very nice poem. And of course we finished on Spring's Welcome. So, Spring's Welcome. What bird so sings, yet so does wail? Oh, 'tis the ravished nightingale. Jug, 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 taroo, she cries, and still her woes at midnight rise. Brave prick song, who is't now we hear? None but the lark so shrill and clear. Now at heaven's gate she claps her wings, the morn not waking till she sings. Hark, hark, with what a pretty throat poor Robin Redbreast tunes his note. Hark how the jolly cuckoos sing, cuckoo, to come in the spring, cuckoo, to welcome in the spring. I apologise, I misspoke there, didn't I? It should have been to welcome in the spring twice. But still, we read both of those last week, so I won't, I shan't repeat myself in this instance. So we move on to some poems we haven't seen before. Beauty Bathing by Anthony Munday. So let's find out who Anthony Munday was. Anthony Munday, or Monday, 1560-ish to the 10th of August, 1633, was an English playwright and miscellaneous writer. He was baptised on the 13th of October 1560 in St Gregory by St Paul's, London, and was the son of Christopher Munday, a stationer, and Jane Munday. Well, if they know the date on which he was baptised, and that's 1560, why have they written 1560 question mark? Oh, I suppose it could have been earlier than that. It could have been 1559 for all they know. Fair enough. He was one of the chief predecessors of Shakespeare in English dramatic composition and wrote plays about Robin Hood. He is believed to be the primary author of Sir Thomas More, on which he is believed to have collaborated with Henry Chettle, Thomas Heywood, William Shakespeare and Thomas Dekker. Oh. Yeah, let's read through a bit of his life and then we'll continue with the poetry. So, biography. He was once thought to have been born in 1553 because the monument to him in the church of St. Stephen, Coleman Street, since destroyed, stated at the time of his death he was 80 years old. And indeed, as we can see in the Oxford Book of Poetry. My apologies. The Oxford Book of English Verse. You'd think I'd remember it by now, wouldn't you? Indeed, that's what they thought when they published this in 1900. From the inscription, we likewise learn that he was a citizen and a draper. I don't know what a draper is, or should that be draper? I'm not sure. In 1589 he was living in the city, and dates his translation of the history of Palmendos from my house in Cripplegate, that he carried on the business of a draper, or had some connection with the trade as late as 1613, may be gathered from the following passage at the close of the Triumph of Truth, the city pageant for that year, by Thomas Middleton. The firework being made by Master Humphrey Nichols, a man excellent in his heart, and the whole work and body of the Triumph, with all the proper beauties of the workmanship, most artfully and faithfully performed by John Grinkin, and those furnished with apparel and porters by Anthony Munday, gentleman. The style of gentleman was probably given to him with reference to the productions of his pen. Draper was originally a term for a retailer or wholesaler of cloth that was mainly for clothing. A draper may additionally operate as a cloth merchant or a haberdasher. Makes sense? Early years. He probably already had appeared on the stage as an actor when he was bound apprenticed in 1576 for 8 years to the stationer John Old, an apprenticeship from which he was soon released. By 1578 he was in Rome. In the opening lines of his English Remain Life, he states that he went abroad solely in order to see strange countries and to learn foreign languages, but he may have been a spy sent to report on the Jesuit English College in Rome, or a journalist intent on making literary capital out of the designs of the English Catholics then living in France and Italy. He writes that he and his companion, Thomas Noel, were robbed of all their possessions on the road from Boulogne to Amiens, where they were helped by an English priest who entrusted them with letters to be delivered in Reims. These they handed over to the English ambassadors in Paris under a false name. As the son of a well-known English Catholic, Munday gained recommendations which secured his reception at the English College in Rome. He was treated with special kindness by the rector, Dr. Morris, for the sake of his supposed father. It gives a detailed account of the routine of the place, of the dispute between the English and Welsh students, of the carnival at Rome, and finally of the martyrdom of Richard Atkins. The playwriting years. His political services against the Catholics were rewarded in 1584 by the post of messenger to Her Majesty's chamber, and from this time he seems to have given up acting. In 1598 to 1599, when he travelled with the Earl of Pembroke's men in the Low Countries, it was in the capacity of playwright to rewrite old plays. He devoted himself to writing for the booksellers and the theatres, compiling religious works, translating Amadis de Gaul and other French romances. It says sick here, so I assume that Amadis de Gaul is not French. Is a Spanish landmark work among the chivalric romances which were in vogue in the 16th century, so that certainly seems to be the case. And putting words to popular airs. An air being a song, I believe. He was the chief pageant writer for the city from 1605 to 1616. These works included London's Love to Prince Henry, his publication describing the city's pageant on the Thames for the investiture of Prince Henry as Prince of Wales in May 1610. One of the more gorgeous Lord Mayors shows... that makes much more sense. One of the more gorgeous Lord Mayor's shows was that of 1616, which was devised by Munday. It is also possible that he supplied most of the pageants between 1592 and 1605, of which no authentic record has been kept. And Prince Henry was Henry Frederick, Prince of Wales, was the eldest son and heir apparent of James VI and Thirst, King of England and Scotland, and his wife Anne of Denmark. His name derives from his grandfathers Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, and Frederick II of Denmark. Prince Henry was... Okay, this isn't important to the poetry, but ever so quickly, who was he? Why did Charles take over instead? Prince Henry was widely seen as bright and promising, as a bright and promising heir to his father's thrones. However, at the age of 18, he predeceased his father when he died of typhoid fever. His younger brother Charles succeeded him as heir apparent to the English, Irish and Scottish thrones. And we all know how well that went. Okay. Anyway, that certainly covers Anthony Monday's life in a fair amount of detail. Interesting to see that he seems to have been engaged in international espionage to some degree in his youth. And that he would of course have had quite a lot of interaction with Catholics, and so you would think would be very familiar with their practices and culture. Anyway, the first poem by him, and the only poem by him, is Beauty Bathing. So, Beauty sat bathing by a spring, where fairest shades did hide her. The winds blew calm, the birds did sing, the cool streams ran beside her. My wanton thoughts enticed mine eye to see what was forbidden, but better memories said, fie, so vain desire was chidden. Hey nonny nonny oh, hey nonny nonny. Into a slumber then I fell, and fond imagination seemed to see but could not tell her feature or her fashion. But even as babes in dreams do smile, and sometimes fall a-weeping, so I awakened as wise that while, as when I fell a-sleeping. Oh, that's awaked, not awakened. What is it with expressions like hey nonny nonny? It's not the first time we've encountered this in poetry. I feel like it's a clear reference to something which I don't know. Which may be lost in history or not. Well, I say lost in history, I'm sure somebody knows, but hasn't survived to the present day. I mean, Wiktionary reveals that nonny is a fool. A meaningless word used in refrains, especially in Old English ballads and glees. Fandom slang, a user who posts anonymously on the internet. Alright, what do they mean by a refrain? This would be a noun. The chorus or burden of a song repeated at the end of each verse or stanza. A much repeated comment, complaint or saying. So presumably it's being used in the chorus sense, and presumably that also applies to poetry as much as it does to songs, I would assume. So it's just a nonsense word, which I kinda suspected, but it's not the first time we've encountered it. I feel like it, even if it's a nonsense word, I feel like it must have some additional significance within poetry. It must have some sort of function, which I'm not privy to. Anyway, chidden. What's chidden? Past tense of chide. Wait, did that say past tense? Past participle of chide. To admonish, to blame, to reproach angrily. Yes. That makes sense. Fie. A female given name short for Sophie. But that's Danish. Is there a mythological figure called Phi that we should be aware of. I'm not seeing much here of help. Nope. None of this looks particularly likely. So where it says, but better memory said Phi, not a clue what that is. Right, okay, so what about the structure of the poem? We have an A-B rhyming stream, rhyming scheme, I think. Imagination fashion doesn't. Smile while does, a weeping, a sleeping. Yeah, so it's broadly speaking A-B. I think it's iambic tetrameter with the usual, what's the expression? The usual deviations, such as trochaic substitutions. Looks that way, doesn't it? Oh, not all of it. A fond imagination. No, that works, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. That only brings us to 3 feet. Yes, okay, some of these are actually only 3 feet. Which makes it seem a bit more ballady, to be honest. Just checking a ballad. What would the rhyming scheme for a ballad be? One moment. Nearly there. Yeah, so a ballad is presented in quatrains of alternate cross-rhymed iambic tetrameter and triameter. So yes, by the end, it does become a little more ballady, although not completely. Her feature or her fashion is 7 syllables, which would make it 4 feet. So it's a bit irregular, actually. Anyway, I'm sure I've analysed the structure to death. It's broadly speaking a iambic tetrameter with some variations. So, yeah, I guess I'll read it once more and we'll move on. Beauty sat bathing by a spring, where fairest shades did hide her. The winds blew calm, the birds did sing, the cool streams ran beside her. My wanton thoughts enticed mine eye to see what was forbidden. But better memory said fie, so vain desire was chidden. Hey nonny nonny, oh hey nonny nonny. Into a slumber then I fell, and fond imagination seemed to see but could not tell her feature or her fashion. But even as babes in dreams do smile, and sometimes fall a weeping, so I awaked as wise that while as when I fell a-sleeping. I feel like the end of this is supposed to be a punchline, but I don't understand it. Because it says he awaked as wise that while as when I fell asleeping, which would suggest he knew nothing more when he woke up as when he fell asleep. But why would he think he would wake up wiser? Because he'd see what is forbidden in his dreams? I'm not sure. As for the hey nonny nonny oh hey nonny nonny, he then, without a break, immediately jumps into a slumber, then I fell. I wonder if that expression, hey nonny nonny oh hey nonny nonny, or something similar to it, was famously used in some play when a spell of sleep was cast on someone, or something along those lines. I wonder if it's what today we would call a meme. Arguably a trope, depending upon how much it was copied, and that's the context we're missing. It could be a nonsense phrase which happened to be used famously in a specific instance, and he's then parodying that. But I could be wrong. That's just guesswork on my part. Anyway, moving on. Sir Philip Sidney. So, who is Sir Philip Sidney? Sir Philip Sidney was an English poet, courtier, scholar, and soldier who is remembered as one of the most prominent figures of the Elizabethan age. His works include a sonnet sequence, a Strophel and Stella, a treatise, the defence of poesy, also known as the defence of... sorry, that shouldn't be poesy, should it? It should be poesy. Also known as the defence of poesy, or an apology for poetry. And a pastoral romance, the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. Let me make sure I'm right. I'm pretty sure that should be poesy. Poesy. Oh, perhaps it is poesy then. Unless I've misread my IPA, which is distinctly possible. Come to think of it, I might have an explanation for its pronunciation here, although possibly not. No, I won't look now, it will take too long. Don't particularly want to derail the stream anymore. Yeah, I'll just go with poesy for now. And that'll be one for me to look up later, after the stream. So where were we? Early life. Born at Penhurst Place, Kent, of an aristocratic family who was educated at Shrewsbury School and Christ Church, Oxford. He was the eldest son of Sir Henry Sidney and Lady Mary Dudley. His mother was the eldest daughter of John Dudley, 1st Duke of Northumberland, and the sister of Robert Dudley, 1st Earl of Leicester. His younger brother, Robert Sidney, was a statesman and a patron of the arts, and was created Earl of Leicester in 1618. His younger sister, Mary, married Henry Herbert, 2nd Earl of Pembroke, and was a writer, translator, and literary patron. Sidney dedicated his longest work, the Arcadia, to her. After her brother's death, Mary reworked the Arcadia, which became known as the Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. Yeah, we'll read the next section and then we'll stop there. Because again, having some context for who these people were can sometimes help with understanding their poetry. And it sometimes doesn't, but you don't know until you've tried. So, politics and marriage. In 1572, at the age of 18, he was elected to Parliament as a Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury, and in the same year travelled to France as part of the embassy to negotiate a marriage between Elizabeth I and the Duc d'Alencon. No, that is not how you pronounce that. How's Cisadilla pronounced? Would help if I knew the language. Probably Spanish? Do they use Cisadillas? Oh, this is French. I just want to copy that Cisadilla so I can double check pronunciation. It is used where a C pronounced S occurs before A, O, or U. Well, that's actually IPA, isn't it? I assume that's... could be wrong. Okay, so it's... Duc d'Alençon, I think? He spent the next several years in mainland Europe, moving through Germany, Italy, Poland, the Kingdom of Hungary, and Austria. On these travels, he met a number of prominent European intellectuals and politicians. Returning to England in 1575, Sidney met Penelope Devereux. Devereux. I think that's Devereux. Sidney met Penelope Devereux, who would later marry Robert Rich, 1st Earl of Warwick. Although much younger, she would inspire his famous sonnet sequence of the 1580s, Aristophel and Stella. Her father, Walter Devereux, 1st Earl of Essex, was said to have planned to marry his daughter to Sidney, but he died in 1576, and this did not occur. In England, Sidney occupied himself with politics and art. He defended his father's administration of Ireland in a lengthy document. More seriously, because clearly that wasn't serious, the administration of Ireland, more seriously, he quarrelled with Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, probably because of Sidney's opposition to the French marriage of Elizabeth to the much younger Alençon, which de Vere championed. In the aftermath of this episode, Sidney challenged de Vere to a duel, which Elizabeth forbade. He then wrote a lengthy letter to the Queen detailing the foolishness of the French marriage. Characteristically, Elizabeth bristled at his presumption, and Sidney prudently retired from court. Goodness. During a 1577 diplomatic visit to Prague, Sidney secretly visited the exiled Jesuit priest Edmund Campion. Sidney had returned to court by the middle of 1581 and in 1584 was MP for Kent. The same year Penelope Devereux was married, apparently against her will, to Lord Rich. Sidney was knighted in 1583. An early arrangement to marry Anne Cecil, daughter of Sir William Cecil, an eventual wife of de Vere. Interesting. Had fallen through in 1571. Oh, sorry. I conjoined two sentences there that shouldn't have been. Sidney was knighted in 1583. An early arrangement to marry Anne Cecil, daughter of Sir William Cecil, an eventual wife of de Vere, had fallen through in 1571. In 1583 he married Frances, the 16-year-old daughter of Sir Francis Walsingham. In the same year he made a visit to Oxford University with Giordano Bruno. I must be mispronouncing that. Giordano? Probably. I'll go with that. Giordano Bruno, the polymath known for his cosmological theories, who subsequently dedicated 2 books to Sidney. In 1585, the couple had one daughter, Elizabeth, who later married Roger Manners, 5th Earl of Rutland, in March 1599, and died without issue in 1612. Oh dear. I do note that he was where was it? Knighted in 1583, and he had to leave court in... It doesn't actually say, does it? But the implication seems to be that it was in the 1570s, late 1570s. So it looks like even if he never returned to court, he was at least in the Queen's favour sufficiently that she was prepared to knight him. Which is interesting. Anyway, so that is who Sir Philip Sidney was. Right, so the first poem from him is The Bargain. My true love hath my heart, and I have his. By just exchange, one for another given, I hold his dear, and mine he cannot miss. There never was a better bargain driven. My true love hath my heart, and I have his. My heart in me keeps him and me in one. My heart in him his thoughts and senses guides. He loves my heart, for once it was his own. I cherish his because in me it bides. My true love hath my heart, and I have his. So I think that's mostly iambic pentameter. Yes, it must be, mustn't it? Rhyming scheme. Surprisingly, it's ABAB. Except the final line of the final stanza, which just repeats the final line of the previous stanza, which is also the first line of the first stanza, and so it rhymes with them instead. Yep, so I think this is just a standalone poem. This isn't trying to... Its form is unique to itself, I would suggest. I don't recognise it as any known form. I'd say the meaning is fairly self-explanatory and typical. Just romantic thoughts and feelings. I suppose the imagery of actually exchanging hearts is slightly novel. Give credit where credit's due. That's about all I can think to say on it. As always, if you have any comments, anything you'd like to talk about, anything you're unsure about, anything you'd like me to address, anything at all, please leave a comment in chat and I will look at it as soon as I can. Anyway, moving on to a piece just entitled Song. So I assume it is a song and it has no other name. Also by Sir Philip Sidney. Who hath his fancy pleased with fruits of happy sight, let her his eyes be raised on nature's sweetest light. A light which doth dissever, and yet unite the eyes. A light which dying never, is cause the looker dies. She never dies, but lasteth in the life of lover's heart. He ever dies that wasteth in love his chiefest part. Thus is her life still guarded in never dying faith. Thus is his death rewarded, since she lives in his death. Look then and die, the pleasure doth answer well the pain. Small loss of mortal treasure, who may immortal gain. Immortal be her graces, immortal is her mind. They fit for heavenly places, this heaven in it doth bind. But eyes these beauties see not, nor sense that grace descries. Yet eyes deprived be not from sight of her fair eyes, which, as of inward glory, they are the outward seal, so may they live still sorry, which die not in that wheel. But who hath fancies pleased with fruits of happy sight, let here his eyes be raised on nature's sweetest light. Okay, so this one seems a little more complex. It seems to be in iambic trimeter. Am I saying that right? Or should it be trimeter? I think it should be trimeter. Yes, it should. Trimeter. Yeah, that's right. And it's cross-rhymed. Every other line rhymes. Quite simple rhymes, though. You know, rhyming a word that ends in ed with another that ends in ed is a bit obvious. I just noticed those accents are there to emphasise where the stress falls, isn't it? So it's pleased, raised. Although, are they? That's what I would normally associate with accents in English poetry, as opposed to obviously foreign poetry where the language may actually have accented vowels. But they should... But pleased and raised are all one syllable, are they not? Effectively. I mean, I realise there's the S in the middle, but you wouldn't usually say raise ed or please. Oh, maybe that is what they're trying to indicate here. So it should be who hath his fancy pleased. Let here his eyes be raised. That seems unlikely, because then you break the trimeter. Hold on, what about this line? This would be the fifth line, sorry. A light which doth dissever. Oh, I get it now. This is a ballad. Somehow I missed that. And they've docked the final syllable on the odd numbered lines, so that they have masculine endings that have to have masculine endings, because you can't dock a strong syllable. But wouldn't that make this trochaic then? Who hath his fancy pleased. No, that doesn't work. Hold on. What is going on here? Who hath his fancy... Who hath his fancy pleased. Okay, oh, wait. Who hath his fancy pleased. Who hath his fancy pleased. If I'm reading that right, which I'm not confident about, then that would mean that it is iambic, which in turn would mean that they're not docking syllables, they're adding syllables to give it a feminine ending, which means it isn't a ballad, it's just trimeter. How does that correspond to this line? A light... Yeah, it's bound to be a light, isn't it? It's not going to be a light. It's a light. A light which doth dissever. Okay. So yeah, I may have made a bit of a pig's ear of that analysis, but my conclusion is I don't think it is a ballad. I think it is just poetry written in trimeter, iambic trimeter, which is cross-rhymed. Although that does mean that these accents aren't actually indicating where stress is full. They're just trying to draw attention to that syllable to be like, to tell us that you should actually pronounce it as a syllable, whereas you usually would where you'd usually slur it into the previous syllable. We'd usually say please, not pleased. I'm trying to think, is that elision? Because you'd still pronounce D. Well, I suppose the terminology doesn't matter. I think that's what it's trying to tell us. Because the only other way this would make sense is if that was meant to be stressed, but then the whole stress of the rest of the line is completely messed up. It becomes who hath his fancy pleased, which that's madness. So that is actually interesting. That means that it's not a ballad, but it's similar to a ballad. It's like they've started with a ballad as a form and then modified it. Anyway, again, I think I've done the analysis to death at this point, as is my wont. So what else is there to say? I suppose the meaning. Yeah, I'll give it one more read, thinking about the meaning. Then perhaps we'll give that a quick discussion, and then we'll move on to the next one. So, who hath his fancy pleased with fruits of happy sight, let here his eyes be raised on nature's sweetest light, a light which doth dissever, and yet unite the eyes, a light which, dying never, is cause the looker dies. She never dies, but lasteth, in life of lover's heart. He ever dies that wasteth, in love his chiefest part. Thus is her life still guarded, in never dying faith. Thus is his death rewarded, since she lives in his death. Look then and die, the pleasure doth answer well the pain. Small loss of mortal treasure, who may immortal gain. Immortal be her graces, immortal is her mind. They fit for heavenly places, this heaven in it doth blind. But eyes these beauties see not, nor sense that grace descries. Yet eyes deprived be not from sight of her fair eyes, which, as of inward glory, they are outward the seal. They are the outward seal. So may they live still sorry, which die not in that wheel. But who hath fancies pleased with fruits of happy sight, let here his eyes be raised on nature's sweetest light. I'm a little confused, because it sounded almost as though it was suggesting that if you look upon her, you will die. There seem to be some other interesting notions going on. The idea that to see her is to make her immortal. I think in the sense of nope, I didn't get it entirely. I was going to say memory, but that wouldn't make one immortal. I suppose cultural memory, but I don't think that's what it was suggesting. There was certainly a reference to her traits being immortal, but I thought that was a reference to Christian virtue and the fact that such virtues would be seen as divine. And since God is immortal, you could therefore consider those traits to be. But there was definitely something else going on there that went over my head. I'll give it one last reading. Although I may have to throw in the towel when it comes to interpreting the meaning. Of course, if you have any theories, please leave a comment in chat. I would love to discuss it. So, one final reading of this. Who hath his fancy pleased with fruits of happy sight, let here his eyes be raised on nature's sweetest light, a light which doth dissever, and yet unite the eyes, a light which dying never, is cause the looker dies. She never dies, but lasteth, in life of lover's heart. He ever dies that wasteth, in love his chiefest part. Thus is her life still guarded, in never dying faith. Thus is his death rewarded, since she lives in his death. Look then and die, the pleasure doth answer well the pain. Small loss of mortal treasure, who may immortal gain. Immortal be her graces, immortal is her mind. They, fit for heavenly places, this heaven in it doth blind. But eyes his beauty see not, nor sense that grace descries. Yet eyes deprived be not, from sight of her fair eyes, which as of inward glory, they are the outward seal. So may they live still sorry, which die not in that wheel. But who hath fancies pleased with fruits of happy sight, let here his eyes be raised on nature's sweetest light. I am going to look up descries, actually. Descry, obsolete of descry, to announce a discovery, to disclose, to reveal. That makes sense. But eyes his beauty see not, nor sense that grace descries. So that, nor sense that grace reveals. Anyway, moving on. Voices at the window. Who is it that, this dark night, underneath my window plaineth? 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 Let's look that up, since I've stopped already, and I'm obviously going to have to go back and start again. Nope. No help there. I don't know what that is a reference to. I could understand if it was under my window pane, but that's not what it says. Oh, what was the other one? We came across an interesting word relating to windows when reading Frankenstein, didn't we? What was that? Oh dear, my memory. Nope, I've forgotten. Anyway, so I'm not sure what they mean by window planeth. I'll start again. Voices at the window. Who is it that, this dark night, underneath my window planeth? It is one who from thy sight, being exiled, disdaineth every other vulgar light. Why, alas, and are you he? Be not yet those fancies changed, dear, when you find change in me. Though from me you be estranged, let my change to ruin be. Well, in absence this will die, leave to see and leave to wonder. Absence sure will help, if I can learn how myself to sunder from what in my heart doth lie. But time will these thoughts remove, time doth work what no man knoweth. Time doth as the subject prove, with time still the affection groweth, in the fanciful turtle dove. Or if you new beauties see, will not they stir new affection? I will think they pictures be, image-like, of saints' perfection, poorly counterfeiting thee. But your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish. Dear, do reason no such spite, never doth thy beauty flourish more than in my reason's sight. Interesting. So, what do we have here? Interesting. I notice a few oddities here. There's a tendency for the lines to be 7 syllables each, which is odd because that wouldn't divide evenly into a number of feet, so they'd have to either be docking syllables or adding them. But I also notice that, for example, we have that accent on changed here, which would actually make it changed, which then brings us up to an 8 syllable count. And we also have the same here, underneath my window planeth, which is also 8. But being exiled, disdaineth. No, that's 8 as well. Wait, so does it go from 7 to 8, 7 to 8? Then this is every other vulgar light, so that's 7. Then we're back to 7. So what, we have 5 line stanzas. Oh, what are 5 line stanzas called? Are they quintains? Let me check. Casement. That was the word from Frankenstein for, I think it was a window frame. So that's got nothing to do with planeth. I just remembered that there was a word to do with windows that I wasn't familiar with, that we'd encountered before. But yeah, no connection, it would seem. Oh, syncane. Syncane is 5 lines. So syncanes, the rhyming is A, B, A, B, A. Does that continue? A, B, A, B, A. And there's no rhyming between the stanzas. So yes, I think we're dealing with 7 syllables, 8 syllables, 7 syllables, 8 syllables, 7 syllables, and simultaneously A, B, A, B, A rhyming. Right, so what's going on with the 7 syllables? It is one who from thy sight, so that's trochaic. Who is it that this dark night, that also seems trochaic. Let my change to ruin be, That's trochaic. Okay, so the 7-syllable lines seem to be trochaic, which means they must be a tetrameter that has been docked a syllable to give it a masculine ending. Right, what do we have with the 8-syllable lines? Underneath my window planeth. That's also trochaic. So it's a trochaic tetrameter then. So every line has 4 feet of trochee, so trochee being a strong beat followed by a weak beat. That is interesting. I don't think we've seen a lot of... I don't think we've seen an excess of poetry like that. The I am seems much more popular. Let my change to ruin be. What do we have here? In the faithful turtle dove. Okay, so this line breaks from the convention. Suddenly we have a full 8 here. From what in my heart doth lie. Ooh, that doesn't sound right at the start, but it does by the end. From what in my heart doth lie. Could we have something equivalent to a trochaic substitution here? Is there some sort of... Could it be a pyrrhic substitution? From what in my heart doth lie. That works. Okay, so I don't think the 7-syllable thing is actually consistent. I think this must be just written in trochaic tetrameter, and occasionally they dock a syllable when it's convenient. I think that's what's going on here. Poorly counterfeiting thee. Yeah, that seems likely. Okay, so again, I think that's been analysed to death. I think we can see what's going on in terms of structure. So we're just left with meaning. Right, so I guess I'll read it again. Who is it that, this dark night, underneath my window planeth? It is one who from thy sight, being exiled disdaineth every other vulgar light. Why, alas, and are you he? Be not yet those fancies changed, dear, when you find change in me, though from me you be estranged. Let my change to ruin be. Well, in absence this will die. Leave to see and leave to wonder, absence sure will help, if I can learn how myself to sunder from what in my heart doth lie. But time will these thoughts remove, time doth work what no man knoweth, time doth the subject prove, with light still the affection groweth, in the faithful turtle dove. What if you new beauties see, will not they stir new affection, or will think thy pictures be, image-like, of saints' perfection, poorly counterfeiting thee? But your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish. Dear, do reason no such spite, never doth thy beauty flourish more than in my reason's sight. Alright, what is the significance of a turtle dove? No help there. I feel like it's not a coincidence they're writing about a turtle dove. I feel like it clearly has some significance. I mean, it may just be a reference to love, but there may be something more specific or even different being expressed here. The first element is from Latin turtur, compared with the archaic synonym turtle. The word is not related to turtle, reptile with a shell. From the bird's coo. Okay, that's all Wiktionary has to say on the subject. Since its coo is emphasised and birdsong is generally seen as beautiful, I wonder if that's why they're talking about turtle dove. Oh, they also say in the faithful turtle dove, so perhaps they're well known to be faithful to their mates. I suppose if they had a beautiful song and they were known to be faithful to their mates, or at least thought to be at the time when this was written, then that might make them symbols of perfect love. I'm just going to check my physical dictionary in case that has any additional insight. Turtle. Now usually turtle dove. Kinds of dove, especially a common wild kind noted for soft cooing and affection for mate and young. They say now usually turtle dove, but this poem we're reading was written in the Elizabethan period. So it seems like that's not such a recent innovation of language. I mean, my dictionary itself is moderately old, but not anything like that old. Does it have a print date on it? Yeah. I can't see one, but the preface is from 1950. So it's going to have been written around then. Anyway, that's a tangent. So, looking at this more slowly, who is it that, this dark night, underneath my window plaineth? I don't know what they mean by plaineth, but I assume they're saying, who is it underneath my window? It is one who from thy sight, being exiled, disdaineth every other vulgar light. I get it. So there's two voices here, the person talking in italics and the other person who's in reply. So one person is saying, who's there? The other's saying, it is I'm exiled from your sight, so I'm hiding under here. Why, alas, and are you he? Be not yet these fancies changed? I'm not sure why they say, and are you he, other than just for the to make the poetry work. Because it appears to have... Well, I suppose it tells us that it's the he who's speaking in the non-italics, so we'd assume that the person speaking in the italics is female. So they're essentially asking, haven't your feelings changed? Dear, when you find change in me, though from me you be estranged, let my change to ruin be. So, if I ever change, even though you've already forsaken me, ruin me, is I think what that's essentially saying. Well, in absence this will die, leave to see and leave to wonder. So, if you're away from me, then your feelings will change. Absence sure will help, if I can learn how myself to sunder from what in my heart doth lie. So that, which is a nice line, I think, actually, or pair of lines. I liked that. Well, I suppose it's all 3 lines, isn't it? I feel like I like the idea being expressed there, and essentially they're saying, yeah, absence will help if I can figure out how to separate myself from my feelings. But much more beautifully and poetically expressed, obviously. But time will these faults remove. Time doth work what no man knoweth. So with time, these feelings will change. Time doth work what no man knoweth. I think that's suggesting that no one knows how time works. Or time does a lot of work, but no man knows how, I think is what it's saying. I could be wrong. Time doth as the subject prove. With time still the affection groweth in the faithful turtle dove. So they're saying time does many things. It depends upon the person. In the turtle dove, it causes affection to grow. Well, if you new beauties see, will not they stir new affection? So what if you see other beautiful women? Won't you then fall in love with them? I will think they pictures be, image-like of saints' perfection, poorly counterfeiting thee. So, I'll think they'll be beautiful creatures, but still poor imitations of yourself. But your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish. But your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish. It makes sense to me from, but your reason's purest light bids you leave, to the end of that. Such minds to nourish is more difficult. But your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish. I don't know what the minds are she's talking about. So is it saying bid you leave such minds? Or bid you leave And then separately, such minds to nourish. I mean, the fact there's no punctuation in between suggests it is bids you leave such minds to nourish is then what you're leaving them to. I think I'm missing something there. Could it be the definition of minds? Is there some other usage that I'm not aware of? The ability of rational thought, the ability to be aware of things, the ability to remember things, the ability to focus the thoughts, somebody that embodies certain mental qualities, judgment, opinion or view, desire, inclination or intention. She had a mind to go to Paris. A healthy mental state, the non-material substance or set of processes in which consciousness, perception, affectivity, judgment, thinking and will are based. Continual prayer on a dead person's behalf for a period after their death. Attention, consideration or thought. I think it could be the desire, inclination or intention. She had a mind to go to Paris. I have half a mind to do it myself. I'm of a mind to listen. So where it says, bid you leave such minds, I think that means leaving the inclination to pester me. I think is what it's emphasising. So what do they mean by nourish? Because normally that would mean to feed something in a literal sense or in a figurative sense. To feed and cause to grow, to support, to maintain, to encourage, to foster, to stimulate, to cherish, to comfort, to educate or bring up, to promote growth, to furnish nutrient, to gain nourishment. I can't be sure, but I wonder if nourish here could in some way, shape or form be referring to leave something to heal. In which case the expression, but your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish, would essentially be repeating the point about, but time will these thoughts remove, time doth work what no man knoweth. I mean, expressing the same thing in a different way, but is essentially saying, but even reason tells you to leave these thoughts alone so that they can heal. I think that's probably what it means. I'm checking my physical dictionary now for a definition of nourish to see if it can shed some light on this. Nourish, sustain with food, literally and figuratively, from whence we get nourishing. Foster, cherish, nurse. Nurse! As I was beginning to suspect. Feeling hope, etc. in one's heart. So, I reckon that's what it means. But your reason's purest light bids you leave such minds to nourish, is saying, but reason tells you to leave such thoughts alone, so you can heal. Dear, do reason no such spite? So don't say such terrible things about reason. Never doth thy beauty flourish more than in my reason's sight. So my reason, above all, appreciates your beauty. Okay, so now I've So now we've actually looked at this poem in detail and I can see more clearly what's going on. I do think this is rather a good one. I certainly appreciate it more than the last one we read. Of course, it's possible that I just wasn't understanding the previous one. So, one final reading of Voices at the Window, then we'll carry on. Who is it that, this dark night, underneath my window plaineth? It is one who from thy sight, being exiled, disdaineth every other vulgar light. Why, alas, and are you he? Be not yet those fancies changed? Let me start again. I made a error there. So one last time. Voices at the window. Who is it that, this dark night, underneath my window plaineth? It is one who from thy sight, being exiled, disdaineth every other vulgar light. Why, alas, and are you he? Be not yet those fancies changed? Dear, when you find changed me, though from me you be estranged, let my change to ruin be. Well, in absence this will die, leave to see and leave to wonder. Absence sure will help, if I can learn how myself to sunder from what in my heart doth lie. But time will these thoughts remove, time doth work what no man knoweth. Time doth as the subject prove, with time still the affection groweth in the faithful turtle dove. What if you new beauties see, will not they stir no affection? I will think they pictures be, image light, of saints' perfection, poorly counterfeiting thee. But your reason's purest light, bid you leave such minds to nourish. Dear, do reason no such spite, never doth thy beauty flourish, more than in my reason's sight. So we move on to Philomela, also by Sir Philip Sidney. I do want to quickly check, is this Philomela a mythological figure we should be aware of? It looks like we've actually looked her up before, so probably. Is a minor figure in Greek mythology who is frequently invoked as a direct and figurative symbol in literary and artistic works in the Western canon. Philomela was the younger of two daughters of Pandion I, king of Athens, and the Naiad Zooippe. Her sister, Procne, was the wife of King Terus of Thrace. Philomela's other siblings were Erechtheus, Butes, and possibly Teuthras. Mythology. While the myth has several variations, the general depiction is that Philomela, after being raped and mutilated by her sister's husband, Tiresias, obtains her revenge and is transformed into a nightingale, a bird renowned for its song. Because of the violence associated with the myth, the song of the nightingale is often depicted or interpreted as a sorrowful lament. In nature, the female nightingale is actually mute, and only the male of the species sings. Ah, that was where we came across Philomela before, because we came across Philomela in one of the previous poems as a direct... They were using it as a synonym for the nightingale, weren't they? I've forgotten which poem that was. Anyway. So, Philomela. The nightingale, as soon as April bringeth unto her rested sense a perfect waking, while late bare earth, proud of new clothing, springeth, sings out her woes, a thorn her songbook making, and mournfully bewailing, her throat in tunes expresseth what grief her breast oppresseth, for Terrace's force on her chaste will prevailing. O Philomela fair, O take some gladness, that here is just a cause of plaintful sadness. Thine earth now springs, mine fadeth. Thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. Alas, she hath no other cause of anguish, but terror's love, on her by strong hand wroken, wherein she suffering, all her spirits languish. Full woman-like complains her will was broken. But I, who, daily craving, cannot have to content me, have more cause to lament me, since wanting is more woe than too much having. O Philomela fair, O take some gladness, that here is just a cause of plaintful sadness. Thine earth now springs, mine fadeth, thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. So we have ABAB here, then we go to ABBA, then we go to AABB. Quite the tour of rhyming schemes, isn't it? ABAB, ABBA, then AABB again. I don't think that is a established form of poetry. I think this must be unique to this poem. But I appreciate the variety coupled with structure. It's good. What else do we have? Iambic pentameter, I think? But this bit isn't. That's trimeter with an extra syllable added, these three, I think. Well, to make for the sake of brevity, I think it's fair to say that this poem has a unique form. It's obviously using well-established poetic techniques, but it's, as far as I'm aware, not copying the form of, or it's not using an established form. As for the meaning, it certainly seems to be drawing upon the mythology of Philomela and the idea that her songs are a mournful lament. What else can we say? So it seems to be suggesting that she wakes in April, so presumably that's when spring springeth. So yeah, that's what the first three lines seem to be saying. The first three verses. Sings out her woes, a thorn her songbook making. I think that says a thorn making her songbook. And mournfully bewailing, her throat in tunes expressive, what grief her breast oppresseth. What does it mean by her breast oppresseth? Because to oppress something is to push it down, to keep it down. To keep down by unjust force, to make sad or gloomy. Physically to press down on someone with harmful effect, to smother, crush. So maybe it means to repress something. What grief her breast oppresseth. Probably. For terror's force on her chaste will prevailing. Philomela fair, oh take some gladness, that here is just a cause of plateful sadness. Thine earth now springs, mine fadeth. Thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. See, it's these two lines that also get repeated below that I don't fully understand. Thine earth now springs, so it's spring. You know, the earth is plentiful with life. Mine fadeth. How can your earth fade? What has happened to you? I don't follow. Thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. Again, that sounds like the speaker is going through some difficult times, but Philomela isn't. I suppose you could argue that now that she's been transformed into a nightingale, she's no longer being assaulted. So be happy for that. Is that what it's saying? Well, earlier it described the thorn as making her songbook. So again, that's using a thorn both literally in the sense of a thorny plant in spring, I assume, along with the figurative meaning of one's woes, the problems one faces. So perhaps I'm overthinking this. Perhaps all this is saying is, your troubles are over, I'm still facing mine. Without actually exploring what that is. Alas, she hath no other cause of anguish, but terror's love on her by strong hand roken. What's roken? Past participle of wreak. To cause harm, to afflict, to inflict, to harm or injure, to let out harm. As in to wreak havoc. Oh yeah, it says here, the earthquake wreaked havoc in the city. So, his strong hand broken, wherein she suffering all her spirit's languish, for woman-like complaint her will was broken. But I, who daily craving, cannot have to content me, have more cause to lament. Oh, I get it. So I think it's saying, stop crying over the fact you were raped. It's not as bad as being in love and not being loved back. You know, or at very least, now that it's over, it's not so bad. I suppose it's not. Is it saying it's worse? Have more cause to lament. I suppose it's ambiguous. It could be saying that to be the unrequited. It might be saying unrequited love is worse than rape, but it might instead be saying unrequited love is worse than having been raped long ago. That, you know, it's over now. You don't have so much cause to be upset. Since wanting is more woe than too much having. Yeah, that does seem rather rather sketchy, doesn't it? O Philomela fair, O take some gladness, that here is just a cause of plaintful sadness. Thine earth now springs, mine fadeth. Thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. So, thine earth now springs, is that a reference to pregnancy? Or is that just a more general allusion to things are going well for you now, not so much for me? Or could it again be a reference to this idea that, well, at least someone wants you, even if they're a rapist? Yeah. Unless I've very, very misunderstood this poem, I'm not sure it's aged very well. Nevertheless, I shall give it one more reading and then we will move on. Philomela. The nightingale, as soon as April bringeth unto her rested sense a perfect waking, while late bare earth, proud of new clothing, springeth, sings out her woes, a thorn her songbook making, and mournfully bewailing, her throat in tunes expressive, what grief her breast oppresseth, for terrious force on her chaste will prevailing. O Philomela fair, O take some gladness, that here is just a course of plaintful sadness. Thine earth now springs, mine fadeth, thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. Alas, she hath no other cause of anguish, but terrace love, on her by strong hand wroken, wherein she suffering all her spirit to languish, full woman-like complains her will was broken. But I, who daily, craving, cannot have to content me, have more cause to lament me, since wanting is more woe than too much having. O Philomela fair, O take some gladness, that here is just a cause of plaintful sadness. Thine earth now springs, mine fadeth, thy thorn without, my thorn my heart invadeth. Right, so the highway. I have heard it said that the highway is actually called the highway because the most reliable roads to travel were those that went along hills. I'm talking about in England historically. It's certainly true that the earliest settlers of... Actually, do we know about the earliest settlers? In terms of the settlement of England originally, this would be by the Celtic groups, I think. I'm fairly certain they went along the hilltops, but of course the terrain would have been very different there. The lower areas would have been heavily wooded and or covered in vegetation. Some areas would be swampy and flooded and so on. But it's true to say that that's, I believe, how civilization... do I mean civilization? How societies originally spread throughout England before later groups like the Anglo-Saxons came along and settled the lowlands. And so to that extent, it's certainly true that some of the oldest roads in England, probably the oldest roads, did actually follow hills. But, of course, in winter time, lowland areas would tend to flood and become impassable, whereas high areas wouldn't. So, as I say, I've heard that's the origin of the word highway. It literally means the way that is high. Allegedly, assuming what I've heard is true. Now, I bring this up because this was written in Elizabethan times, and I'm fairly certain that in Elizabethan times they didn't have good roads. Or at least the road network wasn't being well maintained by some sort of authority. I could be wrong. It could be that there were things going on that I don't know about, but certainly At later periods than this, there were times when roads would have only been locally maintained, so I assume that's also true at this point. This may end up having absolutely nothing to do with the poem, but I only mention this because there is a chance, a possibility, that when the writer talks of the highway, that being Sir Philip Sidney, they do actually mean the reliable roads that can be trusted to be passable in winter. It is equally likely that they do just mean the open road. We shall see. So where was I? The highway. Highway, since you my chief Parnassus be, and that my muse to some ears not unsweet, tempers her words to trampling horses' feet, more oft than to a chamber melody. Now blessed you bear onward blessed me, to her where my heart safe left shall meet. My muse and I must you of duty greet, with thanks and wishes, wishing thankfully. Be you still fair, honoured by public heed, by no encroachment wronged, nor time forgot, nor blamed for blood, nor shamed for sinful deed, and that you know I envy you no lot. Of highest wish I wish you so much bliss, hundreds of years you Stella's feet may kiss. Interesting. Okay, Parnassus. I am convinced we looked that up before, but I've forgotten what that is a reference to. I've got a feeling it was just a general reference to the literary arts, but I could be wrong. Mount Parnassus is a mountain range of central Greece that is historically and has been especially valuable to the Greek nation and the earlier Greek city-states for many reasons. In peace, it offers scenic views of the countryside, being a major international recreation site with views of montane landscapes. Economically, its rolling foothills and valleys host extensive groves of olives. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Parnassus is mentioned in early ancient Greek literature. Many of its ancient communities are cited in Homer's Iliad. From a linguistic point of view, it was home to the states of the Dorians, such as the Phocians, who spoke a Doric dialect, Phocian. According to Greek mythology, the mountain was sacred to Dionysus and the Dionysian mysteries. It was also sacred to Apollo and the Corsian nymphs, and it was the home of the Muses. That was it. The Muses are, of course, the source of inspiration in literature and science and the arts. So that's what I was thinking of. So, but the Sir Sidney here, by saying highway, since you my chief Parnassus be, is saying you're my chiefest source of inspiration. I believe that's what he's getting at. Right, Stella. What's so special about the name Stella? I know he wrote some works. Where a character named Stella was particularly significant, because we read that earlier, didn't we? Sir Sidney Philip. Sorry, Sir Philip Sidney. So I should have said Sir Philip earlier. Astrophel and Stella, probably composed in the 1580s. Philip Sidney's Astrophel and Stella is an English sonnet sequence containing 108 sonnets and 11 songs. The name derives from the two Greek words Aster, star, and Phil, love, and the Latin word stella, meaning star. Oh, of course, as in Stella Mass, for example. Thus, Astrophil is the star lover, and Stella is his star. Oh, very clever. How did I miss that after it was just explained to me? Sidney partly nativized the key features of the Italian model Petrarch, including an ongoing but partly obscure narrative, the philosophical trappings of the poet in relation to love and desire, and musings on the art of poetic creation. Sidney also adopts the Petrarchan rhyme scheme, though he uses it with such freedom that 15 variants are employed. Goodness. I see, so that's what they call it when a poet breaks the rules. It's a variant. Hundreds of years you Stella's feet may kiss. I feel like there might be something else being implied here that I'm missing. Something about one's love being on the road that I'm missing. But I mean, clearly for Sir Philip, Stella was... The name Stella was the embodiment of the individual to which your romantic interests aspire. But I can't think of a way to interpret this other than literally, where it's wishing that the highway experienced hundreds of years of kissing Stella's feet. So the feet of those to which people's romantic interests aspire. Okie doke, let's try, let's give this one more reading then, and then we'll move on. The Highway. Highway, since you my chief Parnassus be, and that my muse to some ears not unsweet, tempers her words to trampling horses' feet, more oft than to a chamber melody. Now blessed you bear onward blessed me, to her where I my heart safe left shall meet. My muse and I must you of duty greet, with thanks and wishes, wishing thankfully. Be you still fair, honoured by public heed, by no encroachment wronged nor time forgot, nor blamed for blood, nor shamed for sinful deed, and that you know I envy you no lot. Of highest wish, I wish you so much bliss, hundreds of years you Stella's feet may kiss. Okay, so it sounds like the praise for the highway is actually stems from the fact that the highway is the medium of transition between wherever he and his lover are and coming together. They move through the highway to be with each other. I think that's what the poem is suggesting. So that makes sense. And I must admit, now that this is making more sense, I do appreciate the inventiveness of the poem. So many poems we've read that have, in one way or another, expressed romantic interest, but how many of them have actually given thought to the space between two people? The space that must be travelled. It's good. Oh, I didn't look at the structure, did I? Okay, very quickly. What do we have? A, B, B, A. B. A, B, B, A, B. C, C. B. Sorry, that was A, B, B, A, B. C. C. B. D. E. Is this just a broken... I think this is just a broken Petrarchan sonnet, as the as Wikipedia seemed to be implying. A B B A A B B A. With the sestet being C D E C D E. Does it even vaguely resemble that? A B B A. So good so far. And it should be A again. Oh, it is. Sorry, that was my mistake. A B B A A. Then we'd expect to be back to B B. Oh, we are. B B A. Then we get to the sestet. C D C C D D. Heed, deed. Forgot lot. Oh, so that's A B A B C C. Or I suppose if we were to number this from C, that would be C D. Sorry, C D C D E E. So the C D C D E E are also used here. So yeah, this is a variation on a Petrarchan sonnet. It's good. Okay, and we're still on Sir Philip Sidney. So let's look at his lady's cruelty, which, having a very, very quick look, looks to me to also be a Petrarchan sonnet. I'm guessing this was iambic pentameter. Highway, since you my chief Parnassus be. Do that again. Highway, since you my chief Parnassus be. Yep. Iambic pentameter. So I'm guessing this will be the same. So, his lady's cruelty. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbest the skies, how silently, with how wan a face. What, may it be that even in heavenly place, that busy archer his sharp arrows tries? Sure, if that long with love acquainted eyes can judge of love, thou feelest a lover's case. I read it in thy looks, thy languished grace, to me that feel the like, thy state descries. Then even of fellowship, O moon, tell me, is constant love deemed there but want of wit? Are beauties there as proud as here they be? Do they above love to be loved, and yet those lovers scorn whom that love doth possess? Do they call virtue there ungratefulness? I like the idea of interpreting the moon's movement through the heavens as having an emotional quality, and then the subsequent questioning of the moon to ask about its love life and how love even works in the heavenly sphere. I think that's creative and should be acknowledged as such. And I think this is in proper... This does look to be a proper Petrarchan ode. Sonnet, sorry, not ode. This does seem to be a proper Petrarchan sonnet. So technically it's well crafted. I don't actually have much to add. It seems... I mean, it does seem to have a rather nice balance. It seems to it seems to have reached quite a sweet spot where it's, in the context of the stuff we've already read today, it's fairly straightforward to understand, but at the same time it doesn't seem overly simplistic. So again, if you have anything you'd like to say or discuss, please leave a comment. I will give this poem one final reading and then we will move on to the next one. So, once again, his lady's cruelty. With how sad steps, O moon, thou climbest the skies, how silently, and with how wan a face. What, may it be that even in heavenly place, that busy archer his sharp arrows tries? Sure, if that long with love acquainted eyes can judge of love, then thou feelest a lover's case. I read it in thy looks, thy languished grace. To me that feel the like, thy state descries. Then even of fellowship, O moon, tell me, is constant love deemed there but want of wit? Are beauties there as proud as here they be? Do they above love to be loved, and yet those lovers scorn whom that love doth possess? Do they call virtue there ungratefulness? I must admit, it is notable that in Elizabethan times they were clearly making a very big deal about faithfulness. I suppose it's not that surprising, since the Elizabethans were obviously the late Tudors, and pre-Tudor times they were obsessing, in fact even in early Tudor times, at least up to that period, they were obsessing over chivalry and Arthurian legends and all that, and faithfulness as a virtue is certainly very present there. But it's interesting. It's interesting to note. Right, we have what looks to be... actually, at a glance, I'm not sure this is... The next one is a Petrarchan sonnet. So we'll have to analyse it a little more. So the next poem is entitled Sleep. Come sleep, O sleep, the certain knot of peace, the baiting place of wit, the balm of woe, the poor man's wealth, the prisoner's release, the indifferent judge between the high and low. With shield of proof shield me from out the priests, of those fierce darts despair at me doth throw. I make in me those civil wars to cease, I will good tribute pay, if thou do so. Take thou of me smooth pillows, sweetest bed, a chamber deaf to noise and blind of light, a rosy garland and a weary head, and if these things, as being thine by right, move not thy heavy grace, thou shalt in me, livelier than elsewhere, Stella's image see. Priest is press. I wonder if it's pronounced press. Probably not, because it's rhyming with cease. And we see a return of Stella. I can see there being a danger with a writer creating what is essentially their own mythology and then continuously referencing their own works in that way, because someone who's only newly encountering their works may well not understand the illusions. But I must admit, this Stella that Sir Philip has conjured does seem like a rather convenient figure. It's almost surprising we haven't seen its like before. The meaning of the poem seemed fairly straightforward, I think. Largely it's a praise of sleep, but there's also a lot of allusions to how sleep allows one to transcend beyond the the negative aspects of daily life. I should imagine that's actually a very ancient sentiment. Nor is it the first time I've encountered that sentiment, although it is well expressed, isn't it? Here. Well, I don't have much more to add. I suppose we should look at the structure briefly. What do we have? A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. So the octet is A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Then for the sestet we have A, B, A, B, C, C. Or I suppose you could interpret that as C, D, C, D, E, E if you were to begin naming from C. So that is definitely a variation of a Petrarchan sonnet as opposed to a more formally correct Petrarchan sonnet. Just to verify, do we have iambic pentameter? With shield of proof, shield me from out the priest. Yep. Looks that way to me. So, not much more to be said. So, I think I will give this one final reading, and then we will probably look at one more poem today, and then we will move on to the riddles. So, once again, sleep. Come sleep, O sleep, the certain knot of peace, the baiting place of wit, the balm of woe, the poor man's wealth, the prisoner's release, the indifferent judge between the high and low, the shield of proof, shield me from out the priests, of those fierce darts despair at me doth throw, and make in me those civil wars to cease. I will good tribute pay, if thou do so. Take thou of me smooth pillows, sweetest bed, a chamber deaf to noise and blind of light, a rosy garland and a weary head. And if these things, as being thine by right, move not thy heavy grace, thou shalt in me, livelier than elsewhere, Stella's image see. Oh, I just realised the reference to thou shalt in me, Stella's image see, that is a direct reference to the where was it? I will good tribute pay. So he's rewarding sleep with the images in his dreams, specifically that of his love interest. That's a very nice little allusion that I missed the first time. So we move on to Splendidis Longum Valedicto Nugis. I don't know what that is. So, let's have a quick look, shall we? Splendidus. Splendid, bright, glittering. I guess that's not that surprising. Longum. Inflection of longus. Far, long, extended, prolonged. Okay. Yeah, this so far these words seem somewhat obvious, don't they? Valedicto, I bid farewell, that makes sense, as in valediction. So, splendid long farewell Nugis. What is Nugis? Nougat? Singular of nougat, jest, trifles. I doubt it. I think Nugis is probably a proper noun. Might not be. Oh no. So that Wikipedia has this to say: the Nugis Curialium. The Nugis Curialium of the trifles of courtiers. So Curialium must be courtier. Okay, I was a bit thrown off by the fact that they capitalised Nugis. So I guess that means splendid long farewell to trifles. As in the trials and tribulations we face in life, I assume. So, I think this one probably has the same form as the previous one, having a very quick glance at the final words of each line. This is probably a variation on a Petrarchan sonnet. So, Splendidis longum valedicto nugis. Leave me, O love, which reaches but to dust, and thou, my mind, aspire to higher things. Grow rich in that which never taketh rust, whatever fades, but fading pleasure brings. Draw in thy beams, and humble all thy might, to that sweet yoke where lasting freedoms be, which breaks the clouds and opens forth the light, that doth both shine and give us sight to see. O take fast hold, that that light be thy guide, in this small course which birth draws out to death, and think how evil becometh him to slide, who seeketh heaven and comes of heavenly breath. Then farewell world, thy uttermost I see, eternal love, maintain thy life in me. So what do we have here? Well, I can certainly see the references to death and the references to living a virtuous life. So what do we have? Leave me, O love, which reaches but to dust. So, love that reaches to dust, leave me. So I suppose love which reaches to things that won't last forever, I don't need. And thou, my mind, aspire to higher things. Yes, it sounds like don't focus on transitory things, focus on more permanent things. Grow rich in that which never taketh rust. Yep, that seems to confirm it. Whatever fades, but fading pleasure brings. So, grow rich in that which never taketh rust, whatever fades, but fading pleasure brings. So I think that's saying take pleasure. So don't take pleasure in things that degrade, but you can take pleasure in the things which are pleasurable as they decay, I think. Draw in thy beams and humble all thy might, to that sweet yoke where lasting freedoms be. Why is there a reference to beams? What sort of beams? Draw in thy beams, and humble all thy might. So might being strength, power, humble it to the sweet yoke. So a yoke is something that constrains. You would actually put a yoke on a beast of burden to have it pull something, I believe. I believe that's what a yoke is. Where lasting freedoms be. So could that be the yoke of Christianity? A bar or frame by which two oxen or other draft animals are joined at their necks, enabling them to pull a cart, plough, etc. So yes. And it's described as a sweet yoke because it's a good thing, even though it's constraining. Which breaks the clouds and opens forth the light that doth both shine and give us sight to see. So again, this sounds like a reference to the virtues of Christianity. O take fast hold, let the light be thy guide, in this small course which birth draws out to death. So again, be virtuous between birth and death, and think how evil becometh him to slide. Becometh. What do they mean by becometh? I don't think they simply mean become. They might do. But I don't think they mean turn into. To come about, to happen, come into, arise, to be proper for, to beseem. Could that be what they mean? And think how evil becometh him to slide. Who seeketh heaven and comes of heavenly breath. To arrive, to come. And think how evil becometh him to slide. Who seeketh heaven and comes of heavenly breath. So think how evil becometh who seeketh heaven and comes of heavenly breath to slide. I get the impression that's a warning about those that seek heaven potentially being vulnerable to evil, but I feel like I'm either misinterpreting it or there's some additional nuance there that I'm missing. And what does "and comes of heavenly breath" refer to? I mean, breath has been often culturally associated with the soul, as in spiritus. So it could be those of heavenly soul, possibly. Oh, come to a place. So okay, now I think about it more, I think it's saying, and think how evil comes to those who seek heaven, to cause them to slide, and presumably slide means to slide into sin. I think that's what it's saying. It's saying that if you live a virtuous life to seek heaven, then you become a magnet for evil. Be aware of that. Then farewell world, thy utmost I see. Oh, sorry, thy uttermost I see. Eternal love, maintain thy life in me. Uttermost? Outermost. Extreme, outmost, of the farthest, greatest or highest degree. Okay, so to see the uttermost of the world is perhaps a reference to the heavens? Probably. And then it's saying... And then it's a wish that eternal love shall forever be a part of you. That is after having passed on and presumably entered the heavenly gates. Okay. This is making more sense. So essentially it is just a wish that those that would be alive, so everyone, should aspire to live a virtuous life and seek everlasting paradise, I think. So, once more, let me try again. Splendidis longum valedicto nugis. Leave me, O love, which reaches but to dust, and thou, my mind, aspire to higher things. Grow rich in that which never taketh rust, whatever fades but fading pleasure brings. Draw in thy beams, and humble all thy might to that sweet oak where lasting freedoms be, which breaks the clouds and opens forth the light, that doth both shine and give us sight to see. O take fast hold, let that light be thy guide, in this small course which birth draws out to death, and think how evil becometh him to slide, who seeketh heaven, and comes of heavenly breath. Then farewell, world, thy uttermost I see, eternal love, maintain thy life in me. Nice one to end on. Shows that, they were thinking about these things. I mean, obviously people were thinking about a religion, but, people were thinking about the afterlife and how their actions today might affect their ultimate fate. Still, I have nothing more to add. If you do, please leave a comment, and I will reply as soon as I can. But for now, we shall move on to riddles. If you would like to leave a comment, of course, on the poetry, of course do so, and I will reply. But I should certainly be moving on to the riddles now. Unless there's particular interest in some of the poetry we've read. So I think the last poem we read was 131. So, that was: that I'm your countryman you scarce would guess, fairest of ladies by my looks and dress, yet was I born within the sound of bell, which Whittington of old explained so well, and as from scraping dirt and cleaning shoes, he by degrees to high preferment rose. So from a despicable state I climb, and much resemble both his cat and him. The poor insolvent's fate I often share, doomed to stone doublet and unwholesome air. Freed from confinement, with melodious tongue, I sound my triumphs to the listening throng. No golden chains I wear, or scarlet gown, yet am above the greatest man in town. With fasces consul-like I pass the street, and have due distance paid by all I meet. In me the city's confidence and trust is, more than in all the ministers of justice, and from worse foes I guard it, not to rally, than all those nightly swarms at Black Boy Alley. Ladies, I'm ready still at your commands, though you'll admit me not to kiss your hands. Yet where the lovely sleeping charmer lies, at morn I'm suffered to unclose her eyes. And the solution to that riddle, if I recall correctly, was a chimney sweep. So we'll check that quickly. Chimney sweeper, indeed. So, 132. Far in the east, where morals mix with sports, and wisdom is the pleasantry of courts, instruction e'en to kings I can dispense, reform with guile, correct without offence. But here, like Harlequin, in antique guise, my talent's not to teach, but to surprise. Sportive, but fruitless, witty, though not wise, in days when not one ray of wit did shine, I lived with the dark schoolmen and divine, and now with sage astrologers I dwell, and truths as intricate as theirs can tell. But where I will, I court the sable shade, and foe to light and skulking masquerade. As Spanish dames wear the transparent veil, to invite the eye and show what they conceal, so I the affected modest air am taught, high to be seen and fly but to be caught. Yet still I shall elude your pains and cost, the moment you have seized me I am lost. Witlings pretend I'm of the female sex, born to tease, to puzzle and perplex. But ladies say, who best my nature scan, I'm brother to that dark dissembler, man. With borrowed feature act a doubtful part, profound, mysterious, subtle as his heart. But not like that vain fugitive I range. Fix me but once, and I can never change. Till then I rove, and every form collect, but in disjointed limbs each form reflect. Fair ones, your wit be the cylindric glass, collect the scattered rays and show my face, or touch me gently with ethereal spear. In me the airy spectre will appear, the vainest unsubstantial thing e'er made, a phantom's ghost, the shadow of a shade. I was wondering if the solution could be a rumour. Let's see. Far in the east, where morals mix with sports, and wisdom is pleasantry of courts, instruction e'en to kings I can dispense, reform with guile, correct without offence. But here, like Harlequin in antique guise, my talent's not to teach but to surprise. Sportive... Hold on. This does say but here. So this isn't in the east. Or not in the far east. But here, like Harlequin in antique guise, my talent's not to teach but to surprise. Sportive but fruitless, witty though not wise, in days when not one ray of wit did shine. So this is again a different place and time. I lived with the dark schoolman and divine. I don't know what they mean by dark schoolman. And now with sage astrologers I dwell, and truths as intricate as theirs can tell. But where I will, I court the sable shade, a foe to light and skulk in masquerade. As Spanish dames wear the transparent veil, to invite the eyes and show what they conceal. So I, the affected modest air am taught, high to be seen, and fly but to be caught. Yet still I shall elude your pains and cost, the moment you have seized me I am lost. Witlings pretend I'm of the female sex, born to tease, to puzzle and perplex. But ladies say, who best my nature scan, I'm brother to that dark dissembler man. With borrowed features act a doubtful part, profound, mysterious, subtle as his heart. But not like that vain fugitive I range, fix me but once, and I can never change. Till then I rove, and every form collect, but in disjointed limbs each form reflect. Fair ones, your wit to the cylindric glass, collect the scattered rays and show my face, or touch me gently with ethereal spear. In me the airy spectre will appear, the vainest unsubstantial thing e'er made, a phantom's ghost, the shadow of a shade. Ethereal. Ethereal is an angel mentioned in John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost. In Paradise Lost, Ethereal is one of two angels, the other being Zephon, charged by the Archangel Gabriel to go in search of Satan, who is loose in the Garden of Eden. They find him lurking in the shape of a toad, close to the ear of the sleeping Eve, attempting to corrupt her thoughts. Ethereal touches Satan with his spear, causing him to instantly resume his natural form. Him thus intent Ethereal with his spear. Touched lightly, for no falsehood can endure, touch of celestial temper, but returns, or forced to its own likeness, up he starts, discovered and surprised. The angels then compel Satan to return with them to Gabriel. Ethereal also appears in The State of Innocence, John Dryden's stage adaptation of Milton's poem. So this is something that has a true form, but doesn't often take it. Again, I'm tempted to say it's probably a rumour that this is about, and the truth is its true form. If there are any other guesses, please leave them in chat. Let's see then. So 132. Enigmas. Really? Enigma just means puzzle, doesn't it? I mean, this is a book of enigmas, charades and transpositions. What page were we on? There we go. I'll double check. I'm pretty sure enigma in this sense just means puzzle. Oh dear. I think the browser window's just crashed. Disappointing. So just bear with me a second. This shouldn't take long. Okay, so for whatever reason, my browser's really not happy with me right now. So I will just look up enigma in my physical dictionary instead. Means I can't show you, unfortunately, but at least we can move on. Enigma, riddle, puzzling person or thing, hence or cognate, enigmatic, enigmatically. Yeah, seems so. Right, so what was it? Far in the east, where morals mix with sports, and wisdom is the pleasantry of courts, Instruction e'en to kings I can dispense, reform with guile, correct without offence. But here, like Harlequin in antique guise, my talent's not to teach but to surprise. Okay, that makes some sense. So suggesting that in the Far East, enigmas could be used for a what's the term? I'm trying to think of the word. For the purpose of teaching, there's a word for that. I can't think. Bear with me 1 second. No, I can't think of the word. Never mind. And no, it's not preaching. In the Far East, it can be used. Enigmas can be used to teach, whereas over here, it's used to surprise. Sportive but fruitless, witty though not wise. In days when not one ray of wit did shine, I lived with the dark schoolman and divine. I'm still not sure what they mean by dark schoolman, but divine, presumably with God. So in religious orders, and now with sage astrologers I dwell, and truths as intricate as theirs can tell, but where I will I court the sable shade, a foe to light, and skulk in masquerade. The Spanish dames wear the transparent veil, to invite the eyes and show what they conceal. So I, the affected modest air, am taught, high to be seen and fly but to be caught. Yet still I shall elude your pains and cost. The moment you have seized me, I am lost. Witlings pretend I am of the female sex. That line actually makes a lot of sense. The moment you have seized me, I am lost. Born to tease, to puzzle and perplex. I suppose that was more of a clue than I realised. But ladies say, who best my nature scan, I'm brother to that darkest dissembler man. Ah, they say here, who best my nature scan. More proof that, for some reason, Riddles was seen as a female pursuit at the time this book was written. With borrowed features acted doubtful part, profound mysterious, subtle as his heart, but not like that vain fugitive I range. Fix me but once and I can never change. Till then I rove, and every form collect. So this is describing the process of trying to solve an enigma, but in disjointed limbs each form reflect. Fair ones your wit, be the cylindric glass, collect the scattered rays and show my face. Oh, so you use your wits to solve it. So again, this is all figuring. Or touch me gently with ethereal spear, in me the airy spectre will appear. The vainest substantial thing e'er made, a phantom's ghost, the shadow of a shade. Okay, so in retrospect that does make sense. So, Riddle 133. "'Tis owned, few riddles justly claim esteem, but such as equally shun each extreme. And if fit subject should be fixed upon, for there may be improper ones, your own, then I'm as fit a theme as can be chose. Darkness and daylight equally my foes, betwixt each wide extreme I keep the middle, in this the very emblem of a riddle, a mere non-entity when darkened most, and if too much enlightened, quickly lost. Short are my visits in the torrid zone, in northern climates I am better known. The Gothic bats and sage Athenian owls I please as well as those sharp-sighted fowls that hail my first appearance, not my stay, still better pleased when I'm gone quite away. Oft when in me the virgin blush appears, 'tis deemed a frown and sure presage of tears, and yet that blush, when next I'm seen again, gives hope and comfort to the anxious swain. But most I cheer when venerably grey, and just expiring all my brightest charms display." At first I was thinking the answer might be twilight, but I'm not so sure now. Pedagogical. That was the word I was looking for. I thought it was twilight, although it did seem a bit of an obvious and easy solution, because it referred to darkness and daylight equally being my foes. Well, it's not twilight in the middle of the day, and it's not twilight when it's dark. It's twilight between the two. But then we have lines like, "Oft when in me the virgin blush appears, 'tis deemed a frown and sure presage of tears, and yet that blush, when next I'm seen again, gives hope and comfort to the anxious swain." It doesn't fully figure, does it? What's swain again? Swain is a young man or boy in service, a servant, a knight servant, an attendant, a country labourer, a countryman, a rustic, or a rural lover, a male sweetheart in a pastoral setting. That'll be the usage here, I should think. Aha! I got the browser to work again. Sorry about the technical difficulties. So, "I please as well as those sharp-sighted fowls that hail my first appearance, not my stay. Still better pleased when I'm gone quite away. Oft when in me the virgin blush appears, 'tis deemed a frown and sure presage of tears, and yet that blush, when next I'm seen again, gives hope and comfort to the anxious swain." What could that be a reference to? Well, there is a clear reference here to "in me" when the virgin blush appears. So this is something that you can be inside of. I mean, I guess this again suggests that it could well be twilight, because you can blush in twilight. That makes sense. But I don't fully understand the allusions here, if that's the case. "'Tis deemed a frown and sure presage of tears, and yet that blush, when next I'm seen again, gives hope and comfort to the anxious swain." Why would a blush in twilight be deemed a frown? And why can you be certain that the next time they blush, it gives hope and comfort? But then again, the references to a mere non-entity when darkened most, and if too much enlightened, quickly lost. Could it be ambiguity? Is that the solution? But most I cheer when venerably grey, and just expiring all my brightest charms display. And just expiring when ambiguity expires, all my brightest charms display. 'Tis owned few riddles just claim esteem, but such as equally shun each extreme. And it fits subject should be fixed upon. And if fit, subject should be fixed upon, for there may be improper ones you'll own. And if fit, so if a riddle is fit, it should fix its subjects, for there may be improper ones you'll own, so probably improper riddles. Then I'm as fit a theme as can be chose. Darkness and daylight equally my foes, but twixt each wide extreme I keep the middle, in this very emblem of a riddle. A mere non-entity when darkened most, and if too much enlightened, quickly lost. Short are my visits in the torrid zone. Torrid. Does that mean violent? Oh, very hot and dry. Full of intense emotions arising from sexual love, ardent and passionate, a torrid love scene in a film or novel. Although slightly different, that's probably where I got the idea of violence from, because I was thinking of something full of passionate emotions, but okay. Full of difficulty. Yes, or that possibly. Like a torrid sea, but perhaps I've made that up. Anywho. Short are my visits in the torrid zone. Oh, okay, so where passions are intense, I don't stay long. That again suggests it's not twilight, it's probably something more like ambiguity. In northern climates I am better known. The Gothic bats and sage Athenian owls I please, as well as those sharp-sighted fowls that hail my first appearance, not my stay. No idea what Gothic bats is a reference to. Athenian owls is a reference to wisdom, I'd suggest. Sharp-sighted fowls? No idea. But hailing my appearance but not my stay would again be consistent with something like ambiguity or mystery. Still better pleased when I'm gone quite away. Oft when in me the virgin blush appears, 'tis deemed a frown and sure presage of tears. And yet that blush, when next I'm seen again, gives hope and comfort to the anxious swain. But most I cheer when venerably grey, and just expiring all my brightest charms display. I'm guessing it's a mystery, is the solution. Could be wrong. That's just my guess. Nope, that's not the one we wanted. If there's any more guesses, please leave them in chat. Oh, it was Twilight. Okay. Really? Because that was what I initially thought, but then all these references that seemed more figurative put me off that idea. Does twilight have a meaning I'm not familiar with? The soft light in the sky seen before the rising and especially after the setting of the sun, occasioned by the illumination of the Earth's atmosphere by the direct rays of the sun and their reflection on the Earth. Of course. The time when this light is visible, the period between daylight and darkness. Yep. The time when the sun is less than 18 degrees below the horizon. Very specific. Any faint light through which something is seen, an in-between or fading condition. The twilight of one's life. Maybe. What does my physical dictionary have to say? Light from sky when sun is below horizon in morning or usually evening. Faint light, state of imperfect knowledge, understanding, etc. That'll be it. Okay, so twilight does have a usage which is close to mystery. Twilight arch or curve, bounding the brightest region of twilight, where atmosphere receives solar rays direct. Twilight of the gods, Norse myth, conflict in which gods and giants destroyed each other. Twilight sleep, name of the method of making childbirth painless. Aha. Interesting. Illuminate faintly. So I think it's twilight in the sense of state of imperfect knowledge. Wouldn't mind to see an example of that usage. Oh, Wiktionary does say pertaining to or resembling twilight, faintly illuminated, obscure. See also crepuscular. That's creatures that are most active at the twilight hours. Okay. Little disappointed I didn't get that in the end, but never mind. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I apologise for the technical difficulties toward the end. I'll be streaming again on Friday and Saturday, in which I'll be continuing with Endless Space 2. I get the feeling it's going to be a while until I'm able to finish the game. So I should think at least those two streams will be more of it, and probably Monday's stream as well. Then that brings us back round to Wednesday, when I will be doing more poetry and riddles. As far as I'm aware, all those streams are going ahead. I will let you know if that changes on Twitter. So, once again, thank you for coming. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and good night.